Hello and welcome back to another online photo program at harrynoel.com. This week I have a big congratulations for you. This was a tough challenge, and the challenge of course was photographing anything within a 12-foot or 4-meter radius of a given point that's very, very close to home. And I'd suggested the back door as a starting point. Back door of your home or apartment, anything like that. So it's a tough challenge. Many people say, what? There's nothing there to shoot. And from the results that I've seen that is not the case, and that's what I was hoping you would discover too. And I had a few notes from a few people that they said, well, there's nothing to shoot, and they were quite surprised happily that they did have some excellent things to photograph right where they live. So congratulations on that. It's a tough creative challenge. So again, we're using Lightroom. We have tools available over on our right that I'll reference at times through this critique video. And we're looking through your photos this month of what was submitted. So coming up first, we have a photo shot within 12 feet of somebody's back door, and nicely shot here. A big part of this exercise is observation and looking and looking and looking and seeing what is available to photograph. And this photographer found a micro world, or a few micro worlds within his photos, and I love the shot. Very narrow depth of field. This is a macro shot, of course, of ants. Here's one ant, here's another ant. Focus looks very, very good on this ant, and nicely this ant is on the left third of the screen, which is a good compositional point. Okay, so well done on this one. The next one by the same photographer is a very, very simple shot. It is a piece of wood or a piece of barn board or a piece of lumber somewhere near their back door. And what I like about it is the simplicity, and also recognizing a fun part that is in the top right third of the photo. And there's some flow as well. Everything seems to be moving this way. There's a bit of an arrow, as it were, moving towards the right. So very nicely done. This is flipped to black and white, so monochrome. So nicely done. I like that a lot. So this next one is by another photographer, and shot again 12 feet from the back door. And nicely done. So very narrow depth of field. This is inside their home. And I like it because it's quite abstract, but the main focal point, there's no getting around the main focal point, is this part of the scene, and nicely drops off to elements that support the main focal point, but are not overly there. So very nicely done. This I like very, very much. Coming up next is a photo from a different photographer, and I'm a sucker for dogs, and I included my dog in a few of the photos that I shared, or that I shot, and I think I shared one. So very nicely done. Your dog could be in your 12-foot space that he might wander through, and nicely done that you have focus on the eye. And interestingly enough, the eyeball in this photo is a big part of the scene. If you look towards the left of the eyelashes of the dog, these eyelashes are actually out of focus. This part here, which I don't know the technical term for this part of the eye, is sharply in focus, as is some of the eyeball. So in general, what I say is always get the eyes in focus. When we look at somebody, it's the eyes we look at. We don't look at their ears or their elbows, we look at their eyes. In this case, because the eye is so big in the frame, we have to choose a specific part of the eye to get in focus, because they're so close. And this, I think, is an appropriate part to have in focus. I might play and try and get this part in focus as well and just compare, but I think this has been a good choice of what to get. Again, the eyeball is in the left third of the screen, which is a good compositional position. So very well done, and I'm always happy to see dogs in photos. Coming up next, another one. This is, I think, on somebody's back deck is what it looks like. And this is a, I am guessing, and I don't know this, but I'm guessing the gauge on a barbecue on a back deck. And nicely done. Again, the main focal point is over here. It's what's in focus, but I keep getting drawn into the reflection of the rest of the deck. So nicely done, nice to recognize the possibilities here, and nice composition with top third being the main primary focal point, with the secondary focal point being in the reflection. So nicely done. So this one coming up here is a toaster, of course, and this was submitted twice on Facebook, one with the two red lines of the toaster running from almost perfectly corner to corner. So this bar in the middle, or this spacer in the middle, ran from corner to corner. And I'd suggested moving the camera a little bit so that the two red lines, as it were further away from the middle. So now the one red line is right across the middle and the other red line is in the top, and it sets up a much more interesting photo. We have all kinds of triangles in here, so a big triangle down here with a lot of empty space, and smaller triangles including red and less red. So I like this photo better than having this middle part run right up the middle, and it would be quite symmetrical that way on a diagonal. So I like this much better because the main subject does not run right through the middle, and of course this part does, but it's not symmetric anymore, which adds to the contrast for our brains and makes it a more interesting photo. Okay, coming up next is the same photographer. This is again 12 feet away from their anchor point, which I think was their back door. So this is their back deck, and this was again submitted a couple of ones, and initially the focus was about here, and I'd suggested they aim to have the focus lower down, and this shot works much better with the focus being on the screws. The other thing that I had suggested, me being me, was to get the horizon line here to be horizontal. And the response I got was that was not easily possible just with the camera, as it's not perfect in real life. So I kind of like that there's a bit of an oblique line to the horizon line here. So nicely done. Having the focus on the screws at the beginning or at the bottom of the frame is excellent, and I like it very, very much. So this photo here I'm very, very pleased with because the photographer tried something a little bit different. And they typically have overexposed, or not typically, they have in this case overexposed the shot, which typically is not the way you should do things by the books, but it came out as a beautiful photo. Quite abstract. It looks more like a painting than it does as a photo, and I like it. The focus too, everything appears to be out of focus in the background, which is nice, and there is some focus on this pink set of flowers up here, which is nicely done. The only thing I'd like to see, which is tricky with this scenario in here, is to make the pink blossoms stronger visually, and that would need some post-processing, or to find some different foreground flowers. And the reason I would want more weight visually is that my eye keeps getting attracted to the upper flowers up here and not initially to the main focal point, which is in a good compositional element in the lower right part of the scene. So good work there, and I'm glad you're playing with different exposure ideas. So very, very well done. Nicely done. Here we have a classic framing shot. This young man was in the right third of the photo, and the attention is brought to him because of the frame of the mirror. So nicely done, a nice play on 12 feet from a door or at the anchor point. So nicely done and well captured, and good points for observation to recognize the potential for this photo using the mirror. Next photo is the same young man modeling in the photo, and I like the idea. I do like motion in the photo. or in photos in general. And I like this especially because as the young man runs up or down the stairs, the upper body is moving so fast that it's barely a streak of blur. But because the foot is planted here, it is much, much more sharp. Okay, so there is a lot of motion blur in this photo. There's also focus blur going on. If we look at this step here, it's very out of focus. It gets closer and closer and closer to focus. And then there is some of the sharpest focus, and then it starts dropping out of focus in the background. So this blur in here is due to focus blur. This blur up here is due to motion blur. Motion blur is a factor of shutter speed, and focus blur is a factor of focus. And focusing blur relates to how close you are to the camera, the lens you use, and the aperture you use as well. So the one thing I would encourage to make this photo a little bit better would be to use a tripod. So I think there is some camera shake in it. So although there are relatively sharp elements, nothing is perfectly sharp. I think the staircase could be crisp sharp here, and possibly the big toe, and it's just slightly soft because of lack of tripod in the photo. But good work and good experimenting with this kind of thing. So this photo here is 12 feet from the photographer's back door, and again, amazing what you can see if you take the time to really look around. So this, I think it's a very, very small spider, and heavily backlit. So shot, I imagine, I think, from a shady area and shooting out to the bright light of the day. So again, the little spiders in the top right third of the scene, which is a great compositional element, and all around a great shot here, 12 feet from the back door. Okay, so coming up next again is a photo where somebody played with different exposure. And again, typically you're not supposed to overexpose your photos, but sometimes it can work very well. So 2 photos were submitted based on this theme of stacking bowls, so yellow, green, red, and blue bowl all nested amongst each other. And one was shot traditionally in terms of exposure, and this one was shot overexposed. So if you look at the histogram over here, this spike over here and this white triangle suggests that there is a lot of very, very bright area of the photo and very little to the left or darker parts of the scene. Okay, so traditionally you would consider this overexposed. For the purposes of this artwork, I like it. It's an abstract kind of feel. The one thing I would like to see a bit more is a bit more oomph in the colors, so more vibrancy or some darker elements in there. One easy way to do that is to add some contrast, and that will pump up the colors a fair bit. And if you look at the histogram when I do this, the histogram will stretch towards the right and towards the left, and that's what contrast does, and it just makes the colors pop more. And I may have overdone it on this, it depends on your taste, but I would add a little bit of contrast to make the colors a little more vivid or vibrant. Okay, so this one coming up here, nicely shot again, some fun from someone's garden close to their back door, and I like it. The daisies, I don't know if they're daisies, I'm going to call them daisies, are in the top third. The 2 white plants, for lack of a proper term for them, are prominent in the photo too. The one thing I would like to see a bit differently in this photo is that the white flowers here are more in focus than the yellow flowers, but my eye keeps getting drawn to the yellow daisies in the back. So what I would prefer to see is the focus be on the yellow daisies, which are in the top third of the photo. rather than in the middle of the photo. And there are also stronger elements with more vibrant colors. So I would just switch my focus from the middle of the photo to the yellow, stronger visual elements at the top. Okay, so nicely done. And this here is a photo close to somebody's back door, I imagine, or close to their 12-foot radius. And again, this is captured by taking some time to really look around and see what is available. Okay, and this looks like a very small plant trying to eke an existence between some patio stones or paving stones. Okay, so nicely done. Some very narrow depth of field. I would be cautious about what you're focusing on and pick one specific thing. So this is the edge that seems to be the most prominent and in focus. We have a bit here that's in focus and a little bit here. So I would try to pick one whole element that is more sustained and grabs the attention, because there are three sharp elements: this, here, and here, and a little bit of this rock. So I'm searching for one single thing to look at. Okay, so do refine your focus a little bit. The only other thing I would say is to get this main subject out of the middle of the camera or middle of the photo. So down in the bottom right is where I would try to place it. And the reason I suggest there is you have a beautiful line coming up here which sets up a nice strong triangle and leading line. So I would just move the camera a little bit to get this whole part further in the bottom right, but nicely done. So some good work there. Okay. Coming up here, we have, I don't know what the plant is, but I'll call it wheat for lack of a better term. And I like this photo a lot. Strong leading lines on a slight oblique angle that suggest a triangle, if you imagine it going off the page. Okay, nicely done, and some sharp elements that give a strong point of focus within there, and some good empty space, a space that has a large part of the screen but less visual weight. So we get attracted to things with strong visual weight, and we get attracted to the wheat or grass or whatever it is, which has less space in the green. So the green and the actual plant balance each other nicely. This has more significant visual weight, but there's less of it. This has less significant visual weight, but there's more of it. So the two elements in the photo balance each other out. Okay, so very nicely done, and a big thanks for submitting and your courage to take on this challenge this month. Take care, and we will see you soon. Thanks very much. Bye.